All right, folks, here is the first lobby of the last chance qualifiers. We're seeing a bunch of people go for those large rods. Like you said, no defensive items on this first carousel throwdown.
That's right. And I think that this actually makes it to be very interesting because I think the offensive items in particular are quite well balanced. You have Sword Bow, which leans a little bit more towards that attack damage, that 80-centric carry. And you have Tyr and Ra, which leads a little bit more to that ability power, that AP tree. And I think both have a lot of compositions under their belts. I do think Sword is the most flexible offensive component because it can transition very cleanly between the AP and the AD tree. The particular item that has gotten a lot of love this patch is Hextech Gunblade. That item has become quite ubiquitous across a lot of AP comps, and because of that dynamic, you can use swords for Giant Slayers and Spears of Shojins, as well as a Gunblade. That means that you can have a lot of swords and make it work even in those AP comps.
Yeah, the sword is almost like an item agnostic component, right? In terms of AP and AD, like you said, it can flex into both things. And there was a period of time in previous sets where swords were better in some AP comps for that reason. So we're getting these first openings. It's going to be units in gold along with a bow and a glove. We do get the Senna 2 with the sword, so that's a pretty good item combination to start out with those cannoneers, especially since Namzi is also a cannoneer this game.
Yeah, this leans a lot more towards the AD tree. We got word that this is a Cannoneer Namzi, and it's also Executioner's Edge. So there's a lot of options that you can lean into. I think people still are toying around with Dark Flight in terms of what they want to play. Rengar has gotten nerfed on the most recent 12.20 patch. But Appies is also kind of doing something already be interesting. He's very skipping a lot of those Astro units. He's been a big proponent of not trying to play these greedy economic trades and favoring tempo. And that is where Appies tends to be strong. As you can see, again, avoiding purchasing any of those Astro units. And here we go, the first augment that has a couple of very narrow ways you can play with Scale Scorns and Terrify, trying to encourage you to play that Whisper Tree. Or you can take True Twos and reroll. This is a very difficult spot, I think, for Appies, depending on what he wants to play. And lo and behold, takes a generic tempo augment, hits a 2-star Malphite, which is actually quite strong. And had he picked up those Astros, he would be in a really good spot. But how is there any way for him to know?
Yeah, exactly. You can't tell the future unless, you're not telling us something, and we should probably look into that if you could. But the other thing that you're seeing here, too, is you're seeing a lot of that flexibility in the early game. You're seeing the Cannoneers here. You could go into Darkflight. Like you said, we missed an opportunity potentially for Astral, and we had a Zyra, too, a pretty popular kind of supporting unit in this game right now. But for right now, we're going to see how much damage we're going to be able to do with this Malphite and Senna. With 2 tier 2 units, we should be good on these rounds. Let's see if the Sejuani 2 is going to help get a unit away, especially since Lilia here is actually very strong on these ults with the Giant Slayer to start.
Yeah, Lilia has received buffs. There's been some underground tech floating around whether or not Lilia carry can be a viable thing, and the jury is out on that one so far. I don't know if people feel comfortable busting it out. It seems to be much more of a fun solo queue tactic. And Appies does just have a lot of upgraded units, and Lilia dying means the damage is done. So Appies off to the right start. Actually, the bell from the Sejuani, and overtime ends up getting a win for Soul Reaver, and this is a disaster for Spicy Appies. True Twos is supposed to help you streak on stage 2. He was not able to do so. That is not the start you're looking for.
I mean, we've all had starts in this game where we don't have a single tier 2 unit to start with, right? We had the 2, we sold the Zyra, but we did have a couple tier 2 units on the board, and we still lost that. So in terms of tempo, we are completely 1 round behind now. It's going to be pretty tough to make that up because it affects your economy. It affects how much HP you're going to have at a later stage in the game, because tempo is all about, being the best at this time, hoarding that HP at the top. So if things do go wrong, or if you do lose tempo, you have a little bit of cushion to get back. But here we're seeing the Olaf. Speaking of tempo, one of the most tempo-related units in the entire game, Dan.
I think tempo it depends on how you use Olaf. Olaf can be a good amount of tempo, especially because his traits are so powerful, even early with, bruisers and scale scores if you have to get it online. However, this is more of a ramping strategy for Sully. I think winning that first fight was not necessarily intended, given that he's still level 3. And he has combat training, which is actually, very, very quietly one of the strongest augments that you can get for Olaf, because he scales both ways. Either he wins fights and he's scaling, or maybe in the best case scenario, you kill a couple of champions and Olaf dies. You get a lot of that passive attack damage that's going to make Olaf very fearsome moving forward. So a really good opportunity for Sully to whip out some Olaf Scale Scorn, which can put a lot of pressure onto the lobby if he's able to hit. I think people have this impression that if you don't hit Olaf 3, you're not going to be able to do well in the lobbies. But The reality is, it depends a lot on Sully's early to mid game. And I think right now, everything looks okay. Even has a couple of Ash units just in case. He's evaluating if he wants to play for stronger board. And just plays a single Vladimir because he wants to try to make sure that he can position himself for the best possible combination of whether he can get himself enough HP and economy.
Yeah, so this is all going to be Karma against the world right now. And by the way, I was doing some research on it. Sully loves to play that Zaya. I was wondering which direction we might end up going on that, especially since, we're still kind of figuring things out. One more ult from Karma should be enough, but we're not going to get there as Boss Skills takes the loss. Looking at the HP total, we have 2 perfects, and Emily has probably lost all of the units on every round so far. However, the comeback mechanic in TFT is the carousel choice and priority. We're riding along right now with Phoenix. Let's see where else he's going to go.
Yeah, Phoenix is a player that's been getting a lot of hype going into this weekend from some of the grinders in solo queue. A player that has put in a lot of work when it comes to tournament preparation. However, Phoenix has told me personally last night that he was busy studying for midterms. As a student, had a lot of things on his plate, wanted to prepare as much as he could for LCQ, has not been able to put as much games in. However, the instinct of Phoenix is very strong. If you look at their tournament record historically, has averaged better than a 4.0 in every tournament, across all the tournaments in Set 7 for Dragonlance and Uncharted Realms so far. So just based off that, some people can really kind of turn it on. I mean, another player in this competition is DQA, who's right now in 6th place. He also can kind of turn it on, but sometimes if you test Fate a little bit too much, if you're not as prepared as you could be, that's where you can get kind of punished. So I have mid-level expectations of Phoenix, historically very strong in tournaments, but not as prepared as he usually is.
Historically very strong, especially in first and second days as well. It makes it to the final lobby very, very frequently. Let's see if it's going to be happening again today. It's actually really interesting. There's a very common theory, especially in music, that sometimes not over-preparing actually helps you with this. So you're focused on, midterms, you're a little less stressed coming into the game, and your mind's actually clearer. Let's see if that's going to happen. Sunfire Cape is going to be the item for this Malphite, along with Cybernetic. That Malphite's going to be beefy, and all that needs is a little bit of support from that Twitch, and that's going to be a 2-unit win against DQA.
Really fascinating setup from DQA. He chose to play a Locket and a Morello onto his Kaisa, implying that he does not want to reroll Kaisa. I do think that going for a Kaisa Dragonmancer composition is going to be one of the dominant comps this weekend. However, DQA does not seem to be playing that, instead to be going for a more generic economic-based strategy, maybe try to attempt for a fast 9, as that has also become quite a strong strategy if you're able to toe the line. Phoenix is currently streaking, though, potentially going up against Soul Reaver. The best case scenario for him is being able to go up against Soul Reaver and snap his winning streak. It seems like that won't be the case. Instead, going up against Sully. We saw Sully said, hey, I lost my second fight. It doesn't matter if I win or lose at this point. Ended up winning anyways. And so Sully's stuck in that awkward position of win-loss, trying to lean into momentum, but sometimes the cards just don't fall that way.
Yeah, TFT is one of the only games that you can get frustrated at winning, right? It breaks your streak, and usually what you do on your first round is kind of what you want to carry on, but with some of these augments, right, I think it was 2-2s, you want to win that first round, and we just didn't. But we still have Sully and Phoenix and Soul Reaver at 100 HP again. Basso here with Metabolic Accelerator to start things off, so we are going to be able to lose streak here and make up some of that HP a little later on. Looking at it, looks like we're going that Karma direction. Very, very common early game. Even with just that single rod, you're gonna take some units down.
Now, taking a look at how the rest of the lobby's HP shapes, we have Boss of Skills. It looks like he's rerolling Karma right now. 4 Karma copies. Has that Spark ready to go. No glove to get that Jewel Gauntlet or that Infinity Edge Hand of Justice combination. Spicy Appy's at 92 HP, implying that Appy's did lose again in Stage 2, and that's just really bad. So even though Appy's is in 3rd place in HP, I would take a guess to say that Appy's is actually struggling a lot in this mid game, unless something dramatic happens through item combinations or very good shops, or if you choose to roll down at 3-2, which feels a little bit tough right now. If you do want to roll at 3-2, a lot of comps can get online, but if you're trying to just play a tempo curve, it can be devastating if you're not able to get things online quick enough. Speaking of getting things online quick, you see that Boss of Skills was thinking about rolling deep. There's 2 schools of thoughts when you reroll for a 1-cost carry. You either roll to around 30 at this point, because the 30 breakpoint gives you the best odds relative to your level because you're still at level 4, or you can slow roll use all the excess gold above 50 to get there. And it looks like Bosco Skills is taking it very slow and not trying to roll, despite the fact that he does have 5 copies.
And the itemization actually right now tells me that we're not even really pushing for any of these wins. We got some good units, so we're going to be able to take down units ourselves, but are we going to be able to win rounds? Let's see what the Karma is going to be able to do. At least one more ult doesn't do much. The Boss of Skill is going to have to take that loss again as we're developing more Karmas, one on the other side. When you're kind of re-rolling, every copy you see on another person's board can be frustrating. And this looks familiar to me, Dan. This is something that you love a lot, which is Goldmancer and that Kaisa. And a lot of Giant Slayers, 3 just in this round.
That's tough for Appies. He rolled a 0, so his Goldmancer was not very strong. We'll put a pin on that. Axiom Mark 1 appears as an augment choice. Actually, it was kind of tough because he also has the opportunity to pick Pandora's items, which is formerly the artist known as Pandora's box. You kind of pick and choose your items at that point, and his items are really poor at the moment. So kind of a little bit tricky, but Axiom Mark has such a high ceiling, given that if people are playing anything that's easy to pick off, like Jade statues, it just gives Karma a ton of ways to reset and get her mana to nuke very quickly. Her Inner Flame can instantly kill some of the strongest and even the tankiest champions that you would expect. I've seen Karma very quickly delete, 2-star Itis, for example, or even take down those Terras.
Yeah. The Terra is something that I've experienced personally. And the thing about this Karma, too, is that the positioning on it, you can put her in the front or second row because she's going to develop those ults. And because of this Dragonmancer trait, it's actually pretty tanky. So you could take out this Sejuani or Jax, for example, really early and start grouping the rest together with that Inner Flame. We have the Sunfire board and Thief's Gloves augment here on the other side. So let's see if the Sunfire board is going to be a little bit of a difference maker. The Ezreal in the backline, another one of those really good early game carries, and is it going to take down the Karma? Looks like with the help of the Vlad that is going to happen, and this is something that I think we're going to see a lot of, is just these Ezreals and Karma like during stage 2 and stage 3.
They all kind of feed into each other. The one cost being pulled out of the pool means that it's easier to hit the other one costs. Jason Java is not necessarily going for that though, because he's at level 6 and clearly pushing that tempo. Speaking of, we do have that locket onto the Kaisa, but I do have to point out that one thing that I observed is that DQA has not been getting Lagoon online, and with this set of items and champions, it looks like DQA is going to be going for Bulldozer 2.0. That is the composition that we're used to summarize Seraphine plus Graves and utilizing a lot of Mystics and Cannoneers. You just kind of play the sum of its parts, a very horizontal composition, and Better Together is one of those key pieces to making this composition very strong because you out-sustain a lot of those compositions. The most important item for DQA moving forward after this round will be the Zeke's Herald. If he gets that belt, you'll be able to slam that Zeke's, lean into Better Together. And I think now that he already has that Morello, there's all the more reason to go for that item next round.
I completely agree, but I think the challenging part here is actually the fact that our first carousel was all offensive, right? So I actually think these defensive items might be a little bit higher priority than normal once we do get to this carousel. We are picking first. Spicy Appies will... Oh, we actually have a 3-way tie at 72 HP to see who will be picking at this point. Now it's going to be there. Should wait till the end of the round, but Spicy Appies is going to be picking first along with Jason Java. You said it yourself. Spicy Appies was in third place, but it was almost like a mirage in terms of the actual power level, right? We were just taking down certain units, not necessarily doing any tempo increasing at the time, or else we'd be in a different spot.
Yeah, tough spot for a couple of these players. Appies in particular, when you roll down for the Shimmer Lagoon Kaisa, you need to be streaking throughout stage 2, and it does not seem like he has won any fights on stage 3 thus far. Jason Java, another player that was trying to play tempo by slamming things like Ezreal 2. There's been a lot of sayings. If you have Ezreal 2, you can fast 9, but Jason Java, he does have this Itis, which is very nice, but has not been able to actually get that streak going, has ended up taking another loss. Does go to 7, fairly rich. This Nunu 2 is surprisingly durable, and he did have a Dragon's Claw off his Thieves' Glove, so a decent spot for Jason Java, a player that has been, a little bit under the radar, but very quietly pushing top 5 ranks in solo queue every now and then. Kind of has those habits where every now and then he does push to, 1,500 LP and then runs it all the way down to 1,000. But he has, that ability to get those big streaks somewhere in there. Going up against DQA, who does have that Zeke slammed as you predicted, and doing a frontline Zeri. I think a lot of people have been trying to experiment more with positioning closer to the front line with some of this composition if you lock it slam in particular. This is the case it's given to the augment. And DQA has been reasonably successful at 72, but I think that this team is just a little bit too tanky. The Kai'Sa is not able to reach the back line. The Archangels from Ezreal is going to ramp up, and that does mean Jason Giles is able to turn the corner. The only downside is this Ezreal's not farming any gold. Jason Giles was hoping to be able to pick up some Goldmancer value there. It just seems like overall, you got like one execute, I think. Outside of that, it was pretty simple.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, AP increases after every Mystic shot is a attack speed increase too for that Ezreal, so you don't necessarily need something like a Rage Blade in this situation, because with 60 gold, Goldmancer, and the Archangels, you're going to be ramping up that attack speed super fast, and this Idas here with the Rabadon's blue buff is going to be regenerating a good amount of health, but this front line's actually pretty good. We would love an Idas too at some point, but we've got the Nunu, we've got the Vlad, so we're actually in a pretty good spot, especially since we won that last round. However, we broke our streak 2 rounds ago. That's super unfortunate for Jason, but we're at 60 gold, so we're 20 away from getting full value out of that Goldmancers, but we're still doing good work with that Ezreal.
There's a heads-up play from both players. Soul Reaver having the Dragon's Claw facing the Ezreal to stall for as long as possible. It is his tankiest unit, while trying to let this Lilia, who has a Ruden's Hurricane, interestingly enough. They've since fixed the interaction with Scalescorn and Ruden's Hurricane to not get that extra bonus damage. But this Idas is just very tanky, as you mentioned, with Deathcat, with raw AP, able to get additional shields. One more cast, able to keep all the units alive. Ezreal able to farm that gold.
Wow.
The nice ability to pick up Idas afterwards, just to make sure not to deflate his gold value. Remember, Goldmancer and a lot of other Shimmer items that scale off of gold count can go all the way up to 80. So don't purchase champions in your shop unless you have to. Let's take a look at how the rest of the lobby is. We talked about Appy struggles. Don't need to hammer that too deep, because he knows better than anybody. DQA also taking some heavy losses. I think like a Sully who's rolling slightly at 7, angling for what looked like to be the Jade line as opposed to leaning into the Olaf line, which is quite interesting to me. I wonder if he wants to play Vertical Jade. A Shio comes out of the Dragon Orb. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, you kidding me? Let's see if we're going to be able to put that in. That's an easy pivot, to be honest with you. We got 3 Jade statues as well, but a Karma 1. The Karmas are on someone else's board, so there is some vulnerabilities on this board right now. There are a ton of Giant Slayers as well in this lobby, so I think we're going to be able to break through some of that HP, especially since frontline has been a little difficult to find overall in this lobby. As we do switch out of that Kai'Sa, we're looking for that Graves, like you said. We're going to get the Cannoneer buff along with the Seraphine, who is one of the better kind of carries in this game right now, especially with this better together, like you mentioned. The Thieves Clubs is going to go on the front line. I think that's the Pantheon. Let's see where Emily might end up. Has the Kai'Sa as well, so this is going to be a pretty common thing, especially if the Goldmancer is the Shimmer Scale item.
Uncharacteristically slow for DQA. This was quite poor by his standards. DQA is known for one of his edges being very quick, especially in 30 seconds, must act quickly with roll down and positioning. He missed his Locket, still on his bench. He was not able to get that Locket value, which you often want to put on the Zeri if you do play that bear together. So, plays like that aren't going to get you to regionals, DQA. So hopefully he can continue to, just get the first game jitters out of it. We do see that a couple players take some nasty losses. Bosco Skills taking that L. Spicy Appies dips below 40.
Below 40 at 4 at 2 means you're actually at risk of potentially being very, very low HP at the Treasure Dragon. You want to be able to get something out of that, and sometimes you do need a couple more rounds to find that power. Augment choice here is interesting. I would say Ascension and Cybernetic Shell are things that you'd love to see for your first augment, but we're on our 3rd one right now.
Yeah, and I think that Terrify is also on the table as well, because damage reduction is defensiveness for this composition, but I think because a lot of backline damage exists and it's really difficult to get that Whisper's activation, it's not as viable as it sounds on paper. I like Ascension. The comp, again, wins by stalling out. I think Shell had a real strong consideration as well for DQA. It's kind of an interesting thing. Like, all these augments were perfectly acceptable, but I do think Ascension is probably the safest pick, although I do like Shell a lot. I think he scouted the lobby and said how much AP damage is there. Probably going to make Shell a lot less value, so I think this makes sense to me.
I completely agree with you. I think Ascension's really good, especially, like you said, with this comp in particular. And if you find yourself in a mirror matchup, the Ascension's going to give you better stats against that particular player. But the Olaf has reached the back line, and that is bad news usually if that Olaf gets there. And it is starting to do that work. So Solely goes back to the Olaf, it looks like.
Well, so Solely also has a 2-star Olaf on the bench, so he has 6 in total. That means he rolls on 7. He's probably going to keep rolling on 7. So a variation of Jade has actually surfaced on this patch in particular, 12.2, where people are just going back to playing vertical Jade and not necessarily leaning towards Siphon plus Pantheon to splash in that Whispers. And the reason why is because people are recognize that 7 Jade is still very strong, even though 5 Jade got nerfed. And in particular, it gives you something really powerful to roll for at 7 because you can get those bruises in, you can have Olaf, and you can actually kind of still have this dynamic of 2 bruises going at it. Instead of Siphon, you have Olaf, and he has combat training, so that Olaf is still continuing to scale. The more kills that he gets, the stronger that Olaf's going to scale. And yes, you can even play the scale scorn with dragons now. That's been effective for 2 patches now. So finally, we get to see a little bit of what scale scorns and dragons can make that perfect harmony.
That Kai'Sa and Olaf had an amazing 1v1 in the backline, actually eliminating each other, but the vertical Jade is going to be the winner on this time. That is a tier 1 Xiaoyu and a tier 1 Karma surviving the last one, but Olaf doing most of the work on that particular board, and Olaf 3 would be crazy because, like you said, combat trading. You win, you get AD, right? You lose, you also get AD if you're Olaf. So just going to be, instead of axes, you're like swinging tree trunks at the back line there. So we're looking at a couple of these items. Spicy Appies actually goes for the spat.
Yeah, Appy's his position was looking quite doomed to start things off. Just being very candid, we kind of called that a lot. Stage 2 and 3. It is not surprising in the slice to see him very much on the verge of going 8th. However, DQA is right behind him. I don't know if DQA went for the Protector's Vow, given that he did have a best and 2 bows, but we'll check in with him later. Let's hop on board with Emily Wang, a player who has been known for... Let's hop on over to Jason Java, who currently has Itis and Deja. We'll catch up with Emily in just a second. She's going for a fast 9. Jason looking for that 2-star Deja with these items. Can be pretty strong, although Goldmancer is a lot weaker when you roll down to 0. It basically does... very minimal amounts of support there. So we'll see if this is enough to stabilize. Going up against Sully, who is one of the stronger players in the lobby and has a Soraka. I just noticed a Soraka on 7. You gotta be kidding.
Yeah, it's 4-5 Soraka, and there aren't a lot of actual Sunfire capes. There's the Sunfire augment here, so this is going to help, but on other boards, the Soraka might be very hard to get rid of. Let's see this Deja in the backline too, because like you said, the Goldmancer providing more moral support than actual AP right now. There's that Soraka ultimate. It is healing them up. This is a little bit closer than I think some people might have expected. This Itis is keeping that Olaf busy, and that's the job of that front line, right? Is exactly what it was supposed to do. Allows the Deja to ramp up, and now it is going to get taken down. And so Itis, MVP of that round, Olaf had a little crush on it for the majority of that round.
Yeah, gold diggers love Jade. I mean, that's a fact in real life and also in TFT. The Jade statues gives you more chances to proc that Goldmancer. Able to get 4 additional gold that round because of it. That was almost as good as it gets for Jason Java. And on the other side of the extreme, we have our first 8th place player. Spicy Appies didn't even make it to Treasure Dragon. And I think it was just a fundamental mismatch of what he was trying to accomplish and what he actually was able to get done.
Yeah, we got mild Appies for this lobby. Hopefully we get Spicy Appies coming up. There are 5 more lobbies to go, so there is a little bit of wiggle room if this happens. We have double Celestial Cybernetic here for this Xayah. So every time that Xayah ults, you're actually going to get a lot of HP back. Xayah becoming very popular. Like I said, Sully had been pretty much only playing Xayah before today. I was expecting to see some good Rage Wing play as well, and it looks like it's going to be fine here. DQA going to be eliminated? Yes, our second elimination. That is exact lethal, unfortunately. We have a top 6.
Yeah, DQA, again, his composition, he tried to go for Edge of Night. I understand why, but it just didn't work out as he does take a 7th place. We can talk a little bit more about that next time, as I do think Protector's Vow is crucial. Hopping on board Soulreaver, who is playing the expected version of that Whispers Jade Soifin, is what they call it. It's a combination of Siphon and Xiaoyu. Looking for a combination of items that can really utilize the fact that this comp is really sturdy and has a lot of burst. Like he might end up going for an Edge of Night and then spread the rest of the components here. Does have 2 upgrades on his dragon, so that is massive. Even though he doesn't have Pantheon 2, he's still playing that Silas. I think that's a good call out. 4 Bruiser is a very nice way to lean into Jade in particular. Ends up combining the items onto the Jax 2 instead of spreading out for Cybernetics. I think that's okay, given that some of these other 1-star units are more support roles, and they're not actually trying to get anything done. So I think this is okay.
Yeah, the cybernetic, especially if you're going to put it on someone like the Gnar, might eat an auto attack. And yeah, we've had rounds get determined by one auto attack, but the chances are it's not going to be as helpful. As we move over to Sully once again, we have the Giant Slayer Bloodthirster. We saw Edge of Night on the other one. The Olaf actually has this the Xiaoyu build from our last board here, so we're going to get to see how both of those interact with each other, as I think it's Emily on the backline here with the tankiest Kaisa you ever did see. We do have at least 50 gold for Emily, so that Goldmancer staff, more than moral support, actually going to be giving some of that AP, spreading it around as well. And again, tons of Giant Slayers, but this one not enough damage at all. Huge loss from Emily.
Yeah, Giant Slayer is really strong right now, and particularly when you have Warriors active, because it stacks multiplicatively. For all the TFT nerds out there, a lot of damage calculations and formulas have been changed to be additive. There's very few multiplicative ways to amplify your damage, and the ones that you can are really strong, and Giant Slayer and Warrior tends to interact in that way. So I like it in particular on units like Olaf. The Ruinous Hurricane is also a really good shout because he has a lot of raw AD. I think a lot of people started weaning off of Ruinous Hurricane on Olaf these days, largely because Olaf really cares about single target damage, but because of the raw AD you get from things like combat training, and the fact that you can splash backline units, I think that's a good shout.
I completely agree. I think backline access is why even 2-cost units like Lux can be so good in today's meta. So here we have the Bloodthirster Giant Slayer here for Sully once again with a Jace in the middle. Let's see who's going to be able to steal this Xiaoyu. That Cav, Thornmail, or Bramble, and that Warmog should keep the Xiaoyu busy for a little while longer. All the while, though, there's the Xayah in the backline trying to ramp up. A lot more yellow HP, but there's a lot of power still coming from this Xayah. You cannot count it out, especially since Xiaoyu taking a little bit of a walk along the beach. Oh, clutch, though. Soraka ultimate. This should be it with the Xiaoyu, but Xayah putting up a really good fight there.
Yeah, and Phoenix has turned the corner for the most part. It looks like Phoenix is at least guaranteed somewhere around the top 5, maybe try to go for that top 3. I think that the Ragewing Xayah board, it's rare for them to be winning lobbies these days, especially when you look at players like Emily, who has 4 dragons already online, or rather 3 dragons, I apologize, but able to 2-star this Terra. I think able to also recognize that this Terra 2 is much more important than playing just like these dragons that have blue synergies, splashing in a Soam just because she has 2 slots free right now, doesn't have anything better, can't really afford the Ocean. So going up against Phoenix is actually a great time for Phoenix to be playing Emily before she's able to power up. Her Aurelian Soul items are pretty close to BIS right now, just raw AP with Giant Slayer and healing through Gunblade. So Emily has the components for a win out, but she needs to minimize the amount of damage. If she's able to win this fight, it would be huge for her, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case because Aurelian Soul just gets ganged up upon. Emily's on her last life. But if she's able to 2-star this Aurelian Soul, if we're up on a Dragon Carousel, everything can flip on its head.
100%. Even though we're at 9 HP, if we do get that tier 2 unit, like you said, everything can change, not just for Emily, but for the entire lobby, because this Terra is going to do really well against things like that Olaf. There actually is a good amount of AD in this lobby with the Xiaoyus, with the Olafs, and even the Siphons that are going to be neutered by some of that defense. Let's see what these items are going to be. We know that Emily is looking for those dragons. Terra 2 is just the first step. I think literally any other tier 2 dragon might help win a round, might not help win the lobby until we get some of those tier 2 Aoshins, for example. So let's see what we're going to see here on this pack. Oh. My goodness. There it is. There's that tier 2 Aurelian Soul. You ask and you receive, right? As DQA didn't do, Emily just hits.
I also realized that Emily wasn't playing around Exiles for half her fight, so she needs to remember that she has Exile. She's keeping Seraphine right next to Aurelian Soul, and that shield can play a big role. I understand the desire to default and surround your carries, especially your Aurelian Soul, with it. Oh dear, is it going to be multiple rounds where she forgets this? She loses almost full Exiles value? What are you doing?
Emily! I know, just because you're in LA doesn't mean you can make this kind of mistake. I mean, that is stats. And like, if we lose by like 40 HP, for example, at the end of the round, it's because of Exile. So let's see if it's going to matter if we're just strong enough right now. Our Aurelian Soul in the backline has already fallen. This is maybe all she wrote here. Well, let's see if the Terra is going to be able to Thornmail their way out of it, especially with the Ionic as well. No, it does take down 1 unit. but that was all that they needed. Emily could potentially have won the lobby with better positioning and maybe some other tier 2 units, but unfortunately for Emily, we're finishing in 6th. Spots of Skills on Elimination Station. Everyone else actually, 3rd and 4th pretty close. First place, though, from Phoenix, developing a lead. Very high probability of finishing in that top 3, top 2 at this point.
Yeah, quite a disaster. I think Emily had at least top 5 locked up if she was able to do that, because I think Bosco Skills was not able to get online, and we've seen Dragon Boards went out from that spot once they hard stabilize, so a lot left to be decided. It's okay, it's first game. Someone has to go 6th. We'll move on.
Yep. You got
Bosco Skills does have the 3-star Karma online, but does not have actually doesn't have the HP to back it up, but the itemization, the augment setup is pretty strong. Karma's not getting the burst, though, and now getting CC chain. This is the one weakness of Karma.
Oh, God, so much
not
damage.
Able to get it done. That's a 5th place. No healing for Karma. Said that Bloodthirster, not able to get enough off the damage just by itself. So we do have our top 4 settled in here. Like Phoenix does end up taking another loss. Jason Java, now the player shrieking, as Deja with this setup is quite fearsome. Jason looking to come for that top spot.
Yeah, Jason, one of the journeymen of TFT, has been playing for years, right? So it'd be really cool if the Last Chance Qualifier is going to be where we actually have a little bit of a coronation that we've expected for players like Emily and Spicy Appies. But if your name's not one of those, you're actually in a better spot right now, because Emily playing Exiles incorrectly, Appies having a little bit of a rough game, DQA just, unfortunately didn't hit. So this is wide open, I think. I think a lot of our expected names have actually ended up in the bottom 4 in this lobby, as we're looking at the top 4 right now. We've got the Zephyr, one of the best late-game items in general, takes out a unit, and for a lobby like this, that's going to be very, very nice, especially since we do have some similarities going in on these comps.
Yep, we're looking for Bard as the best unit that we can play in for Soul Reaver. We're not playing as dependent onto Gnar, so just Jace is less important. Usually Jace and Gnar are a combination. Finds the Bard. I actually would like to think about, not necessarily we have to go for it, but I would like to think about playing an additional Mystic with that Seraphine 2 over, say, Olaf. I think with the prevalence of magic damage, you see a bunch of people have axiom marks and whatnot. Being able to deny that reset can make all the difference in the world, and the Zephyr onto the Shio can also make a huge impact. Siphon rampaging to the back, gets to bite onto the Deja, but almost instantly healing back full. You get to see the power of why Gunblade is such an important item currently in the meta. Another bite, though. This is the smartest Shio, or the smartest Siphon I've seen in quite some time.
Mine don't act like that.
Graduated college.
Yeah. With a good major, too. Didn't major in tuba like I did. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and see the final round of this one. So the Shioyus, once again, with that power, able to, especially with that CC, kind of chain with some other units in the game. This comp, though, could steal a win from almost anyone because it is Deja. With good ults, especially with the Hextech Gunblade, you're going to give your frontline time as well. We saw how Idas was able to steal time away from Olaf a little earlier. With this Hextech Gunblade, the Deja is actually going to be a little bit of a support for that. And then now we're seeing the Terra and the Idas. This is potentially going into the Dragons. We do hit the Idas 2 as well. That's going to be some range on that Idas. Actually, pretty good items on the Terra as well. Let's see how this goes as we're starting to develop more and more Dragons. Olaf 3 finally for Sully. Great Zephyr.
Yeah, Jason's been really good with his micro so far, being able to get the Zephyrs onto the correct targets. I love this little backline Idas support, trying to just cast and give a bunch of shields, almost kind of like a really janky Lulu Seraphine kind of situation.
Totally.
But it works. I think Jason has played this game immaculately, at least from the small snippets we've been able to see. I'm sure there's probably still room for improvement if you look at the micro situations, but overall, very cleanly done so far.
Knowing your win conditions, kind of understanding your percentages, and the scouting going along with it too. As you ask and you shall receive. That is Soul Reaver, even though that is an I at the end of the name. This, I think, was kind of the comp that we expected to see most often, right? We've been talking about Soifin for a couple patches now. We're seeing it again, but we're also seeing that diversity that you talked about. We had that Karma, we had a Zaya a little earlier. So I think we're going to have a really good day of games here with a lot of different comps. We have the Jackson, the front line this time. Really great frontline unit. Let's see if this Soraka and this Jace 2 now, along with the Shio is going to be enough.
Yeah, head-to-head, it's kind of hard because this matchup is still relatively new, so I'm not entirely sure who's favored, but I have to imagine with Olaf 3 stacking combat training and an Edge of Night to prevent any kind of focus fire, I think that Sully is the big favorite here over Soul Reaver despite being down a level. Not to mention that the augments are just so good from both sides, but it does favor Sully there. Sully able to get that win, guaranteed that top 3.
Oh.
Jason Java gets the win over Phoenix. Phoenix still trying to go to 9. We saw Phoenix on low gold at 8, and that was the product of him having high tempo. There's a lot of decent items here. Shroud being one of the highest impact items, and Jason Java has been showing good control over his Zephyr, so Shroud should also be a devastating combination. Phoenix won that Morello probably for his Shyvana if he was able to get to it, but I guess has to settle for a Kuko, which is, I think, totally acceptable.
I remember. I understand that reference. All right, so we do have the party cone here. Let's see where it's going to go. I only get this item on things if I have exiles, so Emily and I can hang out when it comes to that. But let's see where this positioning is. So let's talk about this positioning, actually, because I think backline positioning for Xayah can be confusing for some people, right? Is it like, because Corki was so good in the middle, right? Are we putting Xayah's in the corner? What's the play here in this particular comp?
Well, Xayah wants to generally have the maximum distance because of Swift Shot, and she wants to be opposite of a lot of carries to have maximum safety. Shyvana and Hecarim, especially with Cavalier Jace, tend to troll that scenario because they run away from Xayah. So you can see Xiaoyu's already on the back line, does somehow turn around and focus that Jace. I think that was a little bit of a fortunate outcome there. But Phoenix, again, he's just trying to clean up as much as he can because he's trying to save up his goals. He's not expecting to win. He's probably going to sack one more and go for the 7-1 roll down. But if you choose to go 9 here, it's trying to play for a top 2. I think sacking one more is playing for a top 1. Because the thing is, we level for the Sejuani 2, but we're pretty much not going to hit Shyvana 2, which is the way that we can actually do well or to finish out this lobby strong. Mm-hmm. And just based off the way it's going, looks like Phoenix says, I'm going to try to do my best to preserve top 2. In fact, he might even think about Soraka just to get that healing. Mm-hmm. It's almost basically the same as Sejuani because we're not even playing vertical guild, so the effective HP might be around the same. Plus, you get the little legend healing. Trying to dodge the Zephyr into Shroud. Jason Java, did he get it once again? He did. Sully got completely destroying the positioning game. Is that going to translate to success here for Jason Java because there's so much 80 damage on the other side?
All right, this Ao Shin is going to be the, I think, difference maker here. We are going to get to that ultimate, another Giant Slayer, but like you said, the Hextech Gunblade is actually going to keep ourselves nice and healthy. We got the ult off, but we get critted out because of that Olaf. That's going to potentially be a 4-unit win. Jason Java does take it out, even though Jason has probably played technically some of the best in this lobby. Sometimes the power levels just aren't enough at the end of the game. However, these Zephyrs have been beautiful from Jason Java.
Wonderfully done so far. Jason has developed a little bit of reputation among some of the North American analysts for being a little sloppy in his play in previous tournaments. Today looks like a completely different man. Can't wait to DM Bryce, tell him that he was wrong again. Outside of climbing LP, that is my second favorite thing in TFT.
That's so funny. It's always funny to me when you say that because Bryce is like legitimately such a nice guy. You know, so it's always funny when people are mean to him. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm mean. We're going to get a static Shiv here on this. This is probably not what we wanted. We'll probably put it on Bard again to try to steal some extra mana. And, you know, maybe we'll weaken some people up with the double Shiv here for the AP. Thief's Gloves is going to be pretty awkward, I think, when it comes to some of these units. Maybe on the Jace. This is very interesting here. We do get the Shyvana too. That is a big deal. And we put the Feast Gloves on it, and it is a Shiv day on the Convergence right now. As there are 4 on this board right now.
The lightning comp, right? Tempest gives you a lot of lightning strikes.
What did we call this with Xayah? It was Shredder.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it was the Shredder comp.
Rearrangement on the other side, see if you can get the Shroud, but he's going up against Phoenix. Did he get it onto the Xayah? Ty does not. Ends up getting it on the Rakan instead. We'll see whether or not this is enough. Shyvana does land on both ends, but Phoenix is still on Shyvana 1, and that could be a big difference maker. Ao Shin about to make it rain. And that is all she wrote. Phoenix should be taking critical damage here. Phoenix level to 9, went third anyways. Kind of an unfortunate situation, but in the reality, it's just going to be hard without Shyvana 2.
Yeah, and Phoenix, unfortunately, not finding Rihanna in her umbrella for that Ao Shin there. Third place, but, you know, I think we could actually go back to leveling to 9 if we were going to talk about Phoenix a little bit. I think that's where we would go. As we get the head-to-head here of Sully and Jason Java, 2 different comps. We've got Dragons, and then we have got the Olaf. Olaf 3. It actually took a while to get to this Olaf 3, but once we got here, it has bursted down even some of the tankiest units. Let's see where the Shiv is going to land. It doesn't look like Sully's actually doing a ton of movement here.
You don't need to. All you do, you're going to have to accept that you're going to get shrouded, but you have to try to avoid Olaf getting Zephyred. So a last-second juke. Don't know where anything is. It is the item display bug, but it looks like Xiaoyu ends up getting Zephyred here, and this is going to be the final fight.
All right, final fight. Let's see who will get the fatality here. Lots of HP going down. That Olaf is falling, but is it going to be enough? Alshin is in the back line getting it down, and so it is going to be a rainy day on the Convergence here as we have our first winner of Lobby 1 in the Last Chance Qualifier, and I have got to tell you, I'm impressed by some of these players just in general. Like you